Okay, let's start with this. If my wallet is empty, many people just assume that it's my fault. I didn't work hard enough. I didn't make good decisions. I didn't plan. But in the Gospels, Jesus takes issue with this because he talks about money a lot. And he also talks about the poor. And all of his talk about money and the poor brings up a very uncomfortable question that we really just don't want to ask. And that is this. When Jesus talks about money and Jesus talks about the poor, is he just talking about money and the poor? Or is he exposing something deeper? Something about how power works in our world, who it crushes underfoot, and what good news for the poor really is. Hi, I'm Bo McGuffey. Welcome to the Evolving Christian Faith Network. This channel exists for progressive Christians, questioners, and the church alumni. And if you don't already know, the church alumni are those who live on the edge of faith. They may have left the church, or they may still sit in the pews. But if this is you, buckle in, because here we talk about faith, real life, and sometimes even politics, because what we believe shows up in how we live. Now, by the end of this video, I want to offer a reframing that honestly may very well change the way you see a huge chunk of the Gospels. And here it is in one sentence. A lot of times in the Gospels, money is a symbol for power, and the poor functions as a symbol for the disempowered. And the disempowered are basically all of those whose access to abundant life has either been restricted or just downright stolen from them. And if that is true, if it is true, then salvation for the poor is far more than just getting into heaven when you die, or they should be getting more charity. And instead, salvation for the poor is mainly about what power does to human beings and what the gospel does to power. Just listen to Jesus' tone when he talks about this topic in the Gospel of Matthew, as he says, "It is easier for a camel to go through the eye of a needle than for someone who is rich to enter the kingdom of God." Or we also have him saying in the Gospel of Luke, "Blessed are you who are poor. Blessed are you who are hungry now. Blessed are you who weep now." You see, these statements are not outliers for Jesus. They're not out of the ordinary comments that just don't really align with all the other stuff that he says. Quite the contrary, these themes absolutely dominate much of what Jesus says, scene after scene after scene in the Gospels. And that probably means we should take them seriously. And I'm not just talking about taking them seriously morally, but also spiritually. Because when Jesus is talking like this, he isn't just diagnosing individual hearts. He's also naming how power is organized. Let's start simple. The only reason that money has any value whatsoever is because it is limited. If money were infinite, it wouldn't mean anything. It would be like monopoly money, just falling from the sky. Who cares about that, right? So in society, money becomes a limited token that we use to represent value. And then, almost automatically, how we spend our money becomes something like a confession. So think about it this way. When someone spends $20 on a meal out, they do it because in that moment, it is worth $20 to them. When someone pays $200 a month for entertainment and subscriptions and things like that, what they're saying is, this stuff is valuable enough to me for me to take my limited resources and apply it to it. So Even giving money to a church functions the same way, because people give money to the church, to the community, because they value what it is that that community provides, whether it's meaning, belonging, service, hope, tradition, music, mission, whatever it is. It doesn't really matter what it is, but they value it enough that they want to put money toward it. And there are some times that we can see that there is a specific, overt moral dimension to how we spend our money. For example, some people might go ahead and spend extra on a product in a local store, even though they can get it cheaper online. Why? Why in the world would they do that? Because they want to support a local business. That is a moral stance. Or, and I'm sure you've seen this before, sometimes people do not want to spend their money in a way that supports a particular business. Why? Because by giving money to that business, they feel like they are supporting what that business stands for in their mind, or some sort of business practice that they completely do not like, such as exploitive labor practices. So money is not just currency. Money is a map of value. And once you see that, then suddenly Jesus' obsession with money starts to make a whole lot of sense. Because how we spend our money can reveal what we ultimately value in here, without us even saying a word. Now, let's take the next step. Because we exchange money for goods and services, money isn't just value, it also represents access. Access to food, access to housing, access to safety, access to healthcare, access to education, access to rest. Money also represents access. So, here's a thought experiment I'd like you to join me in. Now, I'm trying to keep it simple, so just sort of like roll with me here, if you will. Imagine that you've got a community of 100 people. And let's say that there is $1,000 per pay cycle circulating in that community. Now, imagine that to live well, and I'm not talking about extravagantly, I'm just talking about living well. In other words, each person then needs $3 per pay cycle worth of access to necessities. I'm talking about food, shelter, basics, stability, all those kinds of things. That's what I'm talking about here. Now, in that scenario, there is enough for everyone to thrive. But now imagine that $500 comes off of the top of that $1,000 and then goes to the top 10 people in the community. Now there's only $500 left for the other 90. And then imagine that $250 goes to the next 10. And then the next 10 get $100 each. And now you've got a total of $150 left for the remaining 70 people who still need that basic access of $3 in order to live well. At some point, wealth hoarding stops sounding abstract and becomes much more tangible. You see, it has a very real effect on people's lives because it's basically the same thing as watching just a few people hoard food and housing while other people around you just struggle to eat and keep a roof over their heads. So now, money is becoming even more than just value and access. Now we see that it is actually a symbol for the power necessary to live. Not just survive, but to live, to have dignity, to breathe, to heal, to grow. And so for the rest of this conversation, I want you to experiment with a mental shift. Instead of thinking about money as money, I would like you to think about money as the power to live. I just want to take a moment here to say, if you find this content valuable in some way, whether it's inspiring or vitalizing or maybe a bit challenging for you, please hit that like button and subscribe. That will help me get in front of more people so that they too can benefit from this content. And thank you very much. I appreciate all of your help as I try to work to get this channel off the ground. Now we can talk about the poor in a deeper way. So when you hear the poor, don't think of it as so much a financial category. Instead, think of it as meaning the disempowered in society. So the poor then becomes a symbol for those people whose birthright, which is abundant life, is being stolen from them by the way power is used in society. And once you see this, you're going to start noticing it everywhere. I mean, just take a look at what's happening around us here in American society. Billionaires are becoming wealthier and wealthier, while many people can't afford to pay their rent or buy groceries. LGBTQIA+ people are treated as second-class citizens, or worse. We live in one of the richest countries in the earth, and yet people still can't afford health care. And as technology expands and jobs disappear, people are being left financially exposed. And the list goes on and on. So the poor is not necessarily just the poor. The poor names the marginalized in society, those who are being pushed aside, those who are being excluded, those who are being exploited, those who are being treated as if they are expendable. It names anyone who suffers abuse at the hands of power. So when Christians say, feed the poor, well, yes, literally do that. Go ahead, feed the poor. But it's not only about food. It's also about taking a stand with the poor, with the disempowered, against whatever it is that is keeping them marginalized and vulnerable in the first place. In other words, against whatever it is that steals away the quality of life that God would have them enjoy as their birthright as human beings. That's what the poor symbolizes. And if someone ever treats beloved children as God, as if they are somehow less than human, as if they are expendable, as if they are just this problem to manage, then according to Jesus, they have crossed a grievous line. This is why Jesus' proclamation is so contentious. In Luke's gospel, Jesus reads from Isaiah in the synagogue, and he talks about good news to the poor, release for the captives, recovery of sight for the blind, freedom for the oppressed, the year of the Lord's favor. What Jesus is talking about here is not a private spirituality. This is a very public and political claim. It is a declaration that God's reign is arriving, and that means something significant and liberating for peoples whose lives are being crushed. It's a message of hope to the captives. It's a message of woe to the oppressors, all in one breath. And that's the part that some people love and some people hate about Jesus. Because salvation is comforting until you realize it is also disruptive. So here we are talking about Jesus and his view on money, and now I think it's time to ask a fair question. Does this mean that Jesus wants us to give away all of our money, become poor ourselves, and basically just reject anything of value? I don't think that's what this means at all. Even in the early Christian movement, Paul had benefactors, and benefactors are people who supported his mission materially. In other words, they weren't poor, and some of them were, quite frankly, probably pretty wealthy. And so the issue is not so much that resources exist even within the Christian community. The issue is what those resources are doing and who they are serving. So the Christian call is not necessarily to relinquish wealth, all status, all power, whatever. It's not about relinquishing all of that. Rather, the call is for us to use what we have for the benefit of others. And that can be very concrete. You can use wealth to feed and clothe people who are struggling. You can use political power, whatever political power you happen to have, to make sure that the marginalized are represented. If you don't have any of that, you can use your voice to speak for the silenced. You can use your time to support those who are overburdened. You can use your skills to empower those who are overtasked. In other words, the gospel doesn't just ask, what do you have? It asks, what is your life, which includes your money, your influence, and your power, right? What is your life doing to the lives of those around you? Okay, one last thought on this, because I believe this is especially important for spiritual health. So even if you do use everything that you have and everything that you are for the sake of others, I want you to know this. You will never, ever be able to fix everything. No matter how much headway you make, you will not be able to solve all of the world's problems. I mean, Jesus even says, you always have the poor with you. Now, this isn't giving up, this isn't apathy, this is just simply realism. There will always, always be need. There will always, always be tomorrow. And so here's the posture that I'm going to recommend to you. Be grateful for the opportunity to make a difference today. Celebrate those wins when you achieve them, because they truly do matter. And it's okay, quite frankly, to be proud of them. But what about tomorrow's struggles? You can deal with those when tomorrow comes. But for now, just let them go. In as much as you can, just let them go. And I'm not encouraging disengagement here. I'm just simply saying that doing your best and recognizing that you have limits is how you stay a spiritually healthy human being and faithful over the long haul. So here are some questions I want to leave you with. Where does your money go? What does it reveal about what you value? And where do you have power? I mean, even if it's just a little bit of power, where do you have some power that could be used to help restore abundant life to someone who has been disempowered? Just some things to chew on, that's all. But if this kind of theology sparks some vitality in you, helps you think, or maybe even helps you hear a divine calling in the depths of your being just a little bit more clearly, then I would love to have you here more regularly. So subscribe if you want more of this, and until next time, peace.